Just a reminder, everyone, we have a lot to get through today, but we will have time for some questions from the audience, so have a listen to what we're talking about. Anything we miss, there's a mic over there, I think there's a mic over there, and let's try to keep the questions productive. Okay, kicking off, Rebecca, your firm Dcode is part VC, part consultant, and you teach governments and tech companies how to work together. National interest can mean a lot of things. It can mean climate resilience, it can mean defense. What is the priority today for government?
So the way that we work with the government is really across all of its missions. So I get this question a lot on what is the government most focused on, and then how does that relate to the technologies you guys work with or the types of investments you're interested in making. And fundamentally, the government, if you think about all the things that you engage with the government on, it ranges and has use cases for defense tech and missiles and ammunition and all sorts of things like that, drones, all the way down to data tools, cybersecurity tools, things like that. So it's very hard to say that the government is singularly focused on one particular issue. The reason that the government is such an interesting customer for many, many startup tech companies is because of the wide range of use cases, the amount of dollars there. And so we very much view our role as connecting the two sides, so the government across its missions and use cases to find the best technologies that are coming out of Silicon Valley and other great innovative places in America.
Mm-hmm. Now, your VC is still pretty young, but where are you investing your dollars?
Sure, so we try to invest in dual use, we absolutely invest in dual use technologies. So these are technologies that have large plays in the private sector. The majority of the revenue is coming from the private sector, but the companies have technologies that the government should be using. So we're heavily focused in data and cybersecurity. By law, the government cannot delete any of its data, so it's going to be a continually growing problem for them to manage it and to derive insights out of it. And then from a cybersecurity perspective, they get hacked rather frequently. So trying to get them access to the best tools. So I think a lot of times people can fall into the trap of thinking, if I want to sell to the government, then it has to be related to defense tech, and I have to be involved in drones, missiles, things like that, and that's fundamentally not the case. I don't think many Americans walk away from an interaction with the government and say, well, that couldn't have gone any better. So I think there's a lot of room for technologies to make it better.
Mm-hmm. And dual use, so Topher, Albedo does, for those who don't know, super high res, low orbit satellites, and so that could cover a lot, right? That can cover everything from monitoring agricultural yields to also defense. So where's your inbound mostly coming from?
Definitely a mix. So quick context, we build satellites that fly super low in this new orbit called VLEO, very low Earth orbit, very creatively named, but it's about twice as close to the Earth as today's low Earth orbit satellites fly. And so because of that, and we build very big satellites, we can capture imagery at a resolution that you can only get from planes or drones. So we can kind of bridge the best of both worlds between a global satellite platform and a high-res, clear, crisp image that you get from an aircraft. And so on the commercial side, a lot of the inbound that we get and a lot of the traction that we have is for these sectors that historically, or today, exclusively will fly drones or planes to get that level of resolution, to make a decision, get an insight, like the agriculture yield example that Rebecca mentioned, prevent wildfires around power lines by looking at vegetation, but giving them that scale of a global satellite. On the national security side, the defense and intelligence side, it's really about augmenting the existing national systems that can capture high-resolution imagery, and we can't talk a lot about it out here, but are oversubscribed today and are focused on the very high-priority kind of areas. And so providing that similar quality of imagery, but unclassified, we can share it with allies, we can kind of create more of a global transparency. We get kind of honestly, a 50-50 split from a dual-use perspective between the defense and intel side, whether that's the U.S. government or allied governments and some of those commercial sectors.
So then, other founders that are in the audience that might be also doing dual-use tech, do you think they should be, would you consider them a good idea to pitch, defense or different agencies, or do you kind of just keep it broad? How would you focus?
I think in the context of the U.S. government.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in most cases, it's pretty obvious who the stakeholders are, who the right users are, which agencies make sense. in some areas, we've gotten caught in politics before that we didn't want to have an opinion on. We were just kind of in the middle of it. But generally, in our experience at least, and generally in the space industry, it's fairly obvious which agencies, whether it's an intelligence community kind of thing or a defense kind of thing on the Space Force side, where to focus. And then usually all these agencies and departments are connected to others and have other stakeholders, and they'll do kind of the connecting and looping in, other agencies and that sort of thing as needed. But we've been pretty focused on two specifically, just where the product market fit is.
Okay. And Kai, so Biofire does biometric weapons, right? Smart guns. So you told me before that you're kind of pursuing a home defense. So why would you say you're pursuing D2C first?
It's a great question. I think very similar to how Topher is talking about focusing on the stakeholders, right, identifying that product market fit. We've done a very similar exercise, and for a quick background, right, Biofire's smart gun product, it's basically a handgun. The first product is a handgun designed for home defense, sold direct to consumer, and one that is basically tries to flip the paradigm of gun safety on its head. What I mean by that is, rather than being accessible to anybody that can physically get access to the firearm, the Biofire smart gun is always locked by default, but due to the use of biometrics and a bunch of other advanced technology, still remains just as accessible to any authorized user like the owner. For us, we looked at the law enforcement use cases, the defense use cases, the military use cases, and I think there's a lot of value to be created there. But in our side, the sales friction, the challenge, I think our stakeholders are not clear, right? On the government side, there's lots of different versions of this, and whether it's looking at homeland kind of side, or whether it's looking at more of a defense-focused or intel-focused kind of side, there's lots of interesting conversations to be had, but there's not a single clear, obvious stakeholder in quite the same way as there maybe is for satellite imagery. And part of that is definitely what led to us making the initial decision to say, let's focus on the consumer market. The premise is clear, the customer is clear, and it lets us kind of get our feet under us and develop a lot of the technology before further investing into exploring that with the U.S. government, at least in an intense manner.
But you've had some conversations with
Absolutely.
Law enforcement, NSA, CIA, stuff like that.
Yeah, and generally our strategy right now is focus on consumer in the very short term, right? And
Yeah.
there's a lot of positive impact we can have on American public health challenges and otherwise with that are less prevalent, I would say, among law enforcement, military. The next step for us is absolutely law enforcement, and that includes federal law enforcement, that includes folks at Homeland and otherwise, and then we've been exploring more the strict defense use cases as well.
Would you say that any of those conversations, are they interested in the underlying tech at all, right? This is how do you diversify such a hyper-specific product?
Absolutely. Biofire's got a very robust patent portfolio and IP portfolio, and more practically, I think we've had to solve a number of very challenging technical issues, even just to build the product that we have. And in fact, most of the conversations we've had on the defense side have been more so about, oh, there's this interesting thing that you've done here, or there's this piece that you seem to be doing differently than anybody else. How can we integrate that, into an existing system, program, platform, approach, challenge, you name it, more so than, oh, here's a new handgun for your next generation of soldiers in the U.S. military.
Yeah, right. Because I think you described it to me that the facial recognition technology and the fingerprint technology has to be able to survive a lot of really intense, every time you shoot the gun, and that kind of has repercussions or reverberations onto the technology.
Totally. A big portion of the challenges we've solved are centered around just that. It's like, how do you package advanced consumer scale electronics into an environment that has to survive the equivalent of 20,000 missile launches,
Right.
and then do so at a price point that is competitive to a consumer, right? Not competitive to the U.S. military, but competitive to your average American. And that certainly positions us very differently than the defense primes and other folks that are building very sophisticated hardware, but often not at a $1,500 price point.
Now, when we do talk about pitching to Homeland Security or CIA, how do you pitch to a customer like that when you don't have security clearance necessarily? Like, how do you advise your startups on this, Rebecca?
Yeah, security clearances are tough. Generally, we would tell companies don't go after those areas first. So like any other channel or market that you want to enter, you really want to make sure you have product market fit and you understand the customer that you're going after. So, if there is a DoD use case that you don't need a clearance, so CIA is very hard to sell to, NSA is very hard to sell to, and a lot of times the successful companies that are selling to those places will have had people who used to work there, have clearances, came out, and then are selling back in. So for most companies who are not going to be hiring a whole cadre of former CIA or NSA people, though you could, a lot of them are looking for jobs, what you'd want to do is look at other broader use cases across the government. So it's a government problem as well. So our advisory firm works with both tech companies to teach them the federal market, and we work directly with the federal government to teach them how to engage with tech companies. I spent a career at CIA, and for many of those years, I worked with In-Q-Tel. And what you heard a lot of times, for those who don't know, In-Q-Tel is essentially the investment, the VC arm of the intelligence community. They hate that way of describing them, but it's the easiest way to understand it. And so what In-Q-Tel will do is come in and say, okay, you at CIA or NSA or whoever, this is your use case. There is a parallel use case in the commercial sector. Usually it's in banking or some other highly regulated industry. And so as a company, if they do have those people who have the clearances already, what you want to do is find the parallel use cases and get the government to see, okay, I am successful in banking in this highly regulated industry. They're able to use my technology, and that's why I know you will be able to do it as well. We would never, from an advisory capacity or an investor, tell companies to go after those markets first. What you want to do is make sure you can get repeatable revenue from the federal government in an easier target space before you get into the harder areas. And I would call the classified space is just a much harder place to sell because it is so opaque.
What's an easier target space then?
DoD.
Okay.
DoD is flush with money. You still have to contend with budget cycles, and we would tell companies, if you want to sell to the DoD, there are great entry points to doing it. There's the SBIR program. I can throw acronyms at you. That's not enjoyable. But there are different programs and different ways that the DoD has opened up the door. However, we would advocate for you always having a partner to sort of help guide you through those programs, because while you can get your foot in the door that way, the real key is how do you figure out a repeatable way to get government revenue so that it can be a core part of your business. And there are strategies to go from that first in-the-door R&D dollars for development into more programmatic revenue. And that's where our advisory firm helps companies, but there's a number of them in DC that help companies do that.
Yeah, and actually I took a look before this at the DoD budget request for 2025, and I think it's close to $850 billion in total, $143 billion for R&D, TE, I forget what the TE is, and then $167 billion for procurement. So yeah, lots of money in in defense. Topher, is like finding talent with security clearance, is that something that you struggle with?
Well, it kind of ties into the previous question and answer. And I spent the first 4 years of my career working in a secure building, no windows, no phone, and then went to Startup Founder where I can do half my job on my phone, which was kind of crazy. But things that have worked for us is one, a lot of the people we hire by nature do have security clearances from their previous jobs, especially if they're working for one of the big defense primes like Lockheed Martin or Boeing and so on. And we haven't hired for those clearances. We don't necessarily need them. They're helpful in a lot of ways, especially at the phase of maturity that we are in now, to understand the mission, understand some of the opportunities that maybe the technology itself isn't classified, but to see what opportunities are out there you need a clearance for. But a lot of those people that we've hired have been so critical on certain projects that they've been able to maintain their clearances through their previous employer for ad hoc support and different things like that. And so they've been able to be in the room for things related to our company that has been really helpful. And then in addition to that, having a strategic investor that's a big defense prime that can also help with the clearance and understanding what opportunities are on the classified side has been pretty helpful for us as well.
Are you prioritizing talent that already has the clearance? You know what I mean? Because it takes time to get security clearance.
For us, it's been a byproduct because we haven't needed that necessarily to get to where we are now. There's more things going forward that it will be helpful to have, but it hasn't been something we look for on resumes. It's been more of a byproduct.
Okay. Switching it up a little bit, we are in an election year. Next week is the election. Now, I mean, this is kind of open question to whomever wants to answer it first, but do you have any, different plans based on who wins?
I can answer that one. I'll go
Brave,
first. I'll
brave
give you
woman.
gentleman time. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we get this question very frequently because the advisory part of our business, I know I'm like a broken record, advisory firm, venture fund. On the advisory side of our business, where we work with tech companies and the government, we get a question. We've been around since 2015, and so we get the question each election cycle.
Right.
If the House or the Senate changes hands, if the administration changes, how does that affect you? It is a bipartisan need and a recognition that government technology has to get better. There's no administration that comes in and says, this is working so well. We're definitely not going to prioritize improving our systems. So our company is apolitical, and we work with, there's political appointees, and then there's non-political appointees, the people who have those jobs regardless. And since this is the builder stage, as you're developing your federal go-to-market motion, you don't typically want to talk to the politicals. You want to talk to the people who are doing the jobs day in, day out, regardless of who's in the administration, because those are the people who are going to buy your products. And that again gets to how different this market is from the private sector market and why you need a partner to sort of help you understand that. But across administrations, you are going to have people interested in data tools, cybersecurity, the latest in AI, all sorts of stuff that people in this room are building, regardless of which administration is in there. Where the dollars flow change, how big the government will be could change. But I fundamentally believe whether or not the government grows or gets smaller, there's going to be a requirement for them to upgrade their systems from the year 2000. So we've got some room.
Yeah, to put it in context, those budget numbers that Rebecca mentioned, over 50% of that goes to technologies that were developed over 50 years ago. And so it's kind of crazy it seems like a very large budget, but what the nation's actually getting for it is maybe questionable. For us, not really. It's more of a wait and see. I think there will be some impacts. We don't have any specific strategies that will change because of it, but in the context of the different agencies and departments that are involved in space technology, there might be some powers that shift and things like that. But we're more in wait and see mode and don't have a plan A here and a plan B there.
So you don't have contingency plans depending
Right.
on... Yeah.
Generally, I think space is a big priority. It won't change that much. It maybe will change a bit of the business development in
Right.
terms of how, to the first question, like how we focus on different agencies or departments.
Not to get too political here, but Biofire seems to be it could be a target on both sides, right? There's people who are just anti-gun and they're like, why are you building guns? And then there's obviously, I think, people who are gun enthusiasts, Second Amendment rights advocates. I think they might see smart gun technology as kind of a stand-in for policy in a way. How do you fend off kind of the criticism on both sides and still get a product to market?
Totally, great question. Obviously, it would be silly of me to say that we don't operate in a very politically charged environment, and guns are a topic in every election. They're a topic in almost every major political conversation in the United States. And one of the things I'm actually quite proud of with the work at Biofire is we've been able to kind of be a centrist convening point, if you will, to say, hey, there's certain portions of the gun rights versus gun control debate that probably America is never going to agree on, and that's not necessarily my place to change, but there's portions of it where I think we can all agree we need to be doing something. And in particular, Biofire's focus on the consumer side is how can we prevent children and teenagers predominantly from gaining access to firearms that their parents and relatives don't want them to have access to, and using those, whether that's from an accident, whether it's suicide, a school shooting, all those really, really negative outcomes that we see unfortunately on a daily basis. How can we be preventing that? And how can we be equipping gun owners, working with gun owners to realize their existing objectives, right? I'm a big gun owner myself, and of the thousands of gun owners I've talked to over the 13 years I've been doing this, not once have I ever heard somebody say, oh yes, I want my kid to find my gun. Of course not, right? And I think in a lot of ways, we've extended that to how we think about hiring, how we think about our investors, how we think about generally Biofire is, let's all agree that we can solve at least this portion of the challenge. And it won't be everything, right? It's not going to solve all gun death in America. But being able to go out there and say, hey, this is something that we, right, left, gun control, gun rights, we all agree should not be happening and we should be doing something about, and focus on that, at least as a starting place. And so I would actually say, rather than there being a lot of things for folks on both sides to argue with, I would actually say there's a lot of things on both sides to agree with. And for sure, there's always going to be detractors, there's always going to be people that are not fully on board with any company, any strategy, especially one in a political environment. But we've seen tremendous support, and whether that's from the gun enthusiasts and experts and gun right advocates, we're a member of one of the largest firearm trade industry associations that is actively lobbying on that side, or whether it's from the folks that are predominantly focused on how can we mitigate the public health impacts of guns, surgeons, pediatricians, and otherwise. And so in a lot of ways, I would say very much the focus is how can we bring people together, and that does make us a lot more robust to macro political changes, right? Because at the end of the day, it's still something the majority of Americans can agree on.
Now, I'm curious, you've told me previously that I think Biofire lobbied against smart gun mandates, which is interesting to me because oftentimes most tech companies will lobby in favor of their technology. Why did you do that?
It's a great question. I think actually that it's a really good example of exactly what we were just talking about, right? There was a mandate on the books in New Jersey, right, around the time that I was working earlier on this company, that basically in the summary said, once a smart gun is available somewhere in the United States, all guns sold in the state of New Jersey have to be a smart gun. And I think this is super problematic because Biofire, I'm an engineer, from a technical perspective, Biofire is optimizing our current product for a very, very specific use case. I want this to be the best handgun that you can buy for home defense, and that's it. And we've made, by default, by design, because we're optimizing for one thing, it's less optimal for some other use case. It's not something you would want to conceal carry. It's not something that's effective for hunting, et cetera. And we can only do that because it's a free market choice, right? I'm going out to gun owners and potential gun owners and saying, here's an option, right? This is something that you can choose to purchase if you think it better serves your needs, and if you're willing to pay a premium for this over a comparable firearm, awesome. I'd of course love to sell you one. But if this isn't a fit for you, if this doesn't solve a problem, hey, let's say you live alone with no kids in the home, maybe a smart gun is less relevant than it would be otherwise. And the mandates just make that more complicated, right? That level of government involvement suddenly means that we have to answer a whole lot more questions, right? We need to build a product that, because we're the only people maturely working on smart guns right now, we'd have to build a product that was able to replace literal thousands of products with a single product, and that's obviously impossible. And so, yes, we've lobbied against mandates. We continue to lobby against mandates. There are no active mandates of smart guns in the United States, and we're going to keep it that way. And I actually think that's a key thing to being able to incentivize the adoption of smart guns, is that it has to be a choice.
Okay. And you've had how many pre-orders so far? You haven't started selling yet.
We have started selling pre-orders.
Oh, you
I'm
have?
not sure an exact number,
Yeah.
but thousands.
Okay.
And our focus right now is very much on working our way through that backlog, scaling up our manufacturing capacity, and we just shipped the very first units out to customers on that pre-order list a couple weeks ago, which is something we're super excited about.
Nice. When we're talking about pre-orders and everything, I think Topher, we've talked about how you have millions of pre-orders, I believe, for your satellites. I'm sure any founder in the audience would want to know your secret. How did you manage to land so many pre-orders before even producing your satellites yet or even launching them? They're launching in 5 months. What was the strategy that paid off looking back?
And it's not millions of satellites that are pre-ordered, but millions of dollars. Millions of satellites would be pretty insane.
Oh, okay. I was like, wow, that's a lot. How
Yeah,
are
yeah.
you going to produce all of those?
No, I mean, we sell, if anyone wants to buy a satellite, let me know. So for us, we'll launch our first satellite in Q1 next year on SpaceX Transporter 13. And we will have a finite supply of what we call tasking imagery in our industry. And tasking basically means a customer says, they point at a spot on Earth and say, I need pictures of these power lines monthly, or I need a picture of Miami ASAP because a storm just ripped through, or whatever it is. And so the way we've been able to pre-book a product that customers are not used to buying until there's a satellite in space and they can actually see the pictures that it's taking is because of that finite supply, combined with the fact that people are familiar enough with imagery, whether they use drones and planes or satellites, to understand the value that they can get from our product of having the highest resolution imagery for whatever the problem they're trying to solve. And so it's that combination of, okay, we've got good product market fit, people know they want this, and there's a finite supply, and so if you want guaranteed access to that, you have to sign up in advance. And we have certain, outs in the contract if the satellite doesn't work or if the pictures are blurry, then we mark it so that the customer's not taking on all of that technical risk. We ask them to have some skin in the game, but they get that upside of knowing that they get a product that's valuable to them without taking on the risk of the satellite. But if they don't move early, then we might sell out, and then it would be a couple years before they could get access to it. So it's kind of the FOMO combined with product market fit.
Yeah, how do you manage the kind of like the supply demand, because your production facility is not quite online yet, is it?
Right.
The scaled production
So
facility.
yeah. So we'll launch the first satellite in Q1. We know how many images that satellite can take over the U.S., for example. So say you can take 1,000 images, just to make the numbers easy, and a customer wants guaranteed 100 of those. That's 10%. And we're now actually completely sold out of the U.S. until mid-2025. And once we start scaling the constellation, mid-2027, once we start scaling the constellation in 2027, it won't be as scarce of a product, and so we'll be able to take more of a traditional enterprise sales approach, onboard customers, not have this kind of finite supply kind of approach to it. And then as we scale up the constellation, that will drive our understanding of how much demand there is out there for, okay, are most of these use cases just kind of weekly imaging of farms or quarterly imaging of properties for insurance, or do these customers need like 5, 6 images a day, and that will drive how many satellites we inevitably put in orbit and how we replenish those as they deorbit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, so your manufacturing facility is in Colorado as well, or?
Yes, down the road from Kai.
Yeah,
Found
so
out
both
last
of you
week.
are, yeah, we got 2 Colorado facilities manufacturing in the USA. Rebecca, how important would you say it is for startups trying to get defense funding today, or just government funding in general, to have, products made in the USA? Is that very important?
It's definitely preferred. The government does prefer that. A lot of what we work with is software more so than hardware. So there's definitely grants and other things to get the manufacturing back into the U.S. When it comes to software, the government does have restrictions on if there are certain people on your teams doing certain work from certain countries, then it makes it very hard to do sales into the government, at least into the DoD and into some intelligence community agencies. It's the countries that you would anticipate. And then the same is true for investors. If you have to disclose your investors to the government and you've taken money, China is obviously the big one right now, that will run you afoul of some of the government regulations and such if you want to sell in.
Mm. Is this something your investors have mentioned? Are they like, yes, we like that you're building in the U.S., in Colorado, or anything, Kai, Topher?
Absolutely. And for us, we are quite strongly regulated by the Department of Commerce with respect to export controls and everything like that. So obviously, the U.S. is excited on keeping its weapons technology inside the U.S., and we're not building missiles, right? Firearms are certainly a much less regulated than super classified ITAR hardware. But for us, it definitely is something that most of our work we need to do in the U.S., or we would need special approval to do outside. And in general, for a whole variety of reasons, whether it's both creating jobs, whether it's from a quality and scalability perspective, and honestly, most importantly, for the early stage that we're at, it's how fast can we iterate, how fast can we improve, and doing that, at our current headquarters facility or just right down the road is orders of magnitude easier than iterating with some sort of overseas vendor, if that's even possible. So Biofire has no plans to take that outside the U.S. now or in the future for a whole variety of reasons, including regulatory.
Now, just to quickly pivot a little bit, I wanted to talk to you, Topher, a little bit about privacy. Obviously, what is it, 10 centimeters you can see from, or you're promising to be able to see?
Yeah, so a single pixel is about the size of a coaster on the ground.
Yeah, so you've got some serious visibility going on. I guess, how do you manage privacy, like potential privacy infringement under the guise of national interest, and avoid the release of sensitive data into potentially wrong hands?
Great question. Yeah, so some context, there's some tangible context on those coasters and those pixels. We cannot identify people. We cannot identify whether someone is sunbathing or fully clothed. We definitely can't read license plates. When I started out at Lockheed, actually, I did, one of my first learning actions was size the telescope you would need to read license plates from space. And you pretty quickly find out, just from back of the envelope, that it's not very feasible. So the movies aren't all they're cracked up to be. But so we're very high resolution, but it's not what you'd see in the movies. And fundamentally, at Albedo, we believe that better data leads to better decisions from a blanket kind of underlying perspective. We've seen that in the past with other technologies. We've seen that in the past with imagery. The first national system, Corona, that's now been declassified, it was a film imaging satellite. Super cool. It would drop film canisters from space. A plane would catch it. Was revealed basically that our nuclear estimates of the Soviet Union were way off. Like our estimates were way off, and these satellites revealed from a decision-making perspective and that data perspective what was more accurate. And so you see that in other technologies and other parallels in other industries. And on not only the, having that high-quality data to inform decision-making is important to us, but also the democratizing access to that, making it creating that global transparency and that global accountability, and not, managing how it gets dished out, but really trying to make it accessible within reason. Though there are, plenty of regulations that we follow, that we have our customers follow. Our customers sign up to very specific terms and conditions that we enforce if they violate those, or we will once we're on orbit. And we track kind of what's coming down, especially as AI advances and as the user can aggregate all these different sources of data, not just overhead imagery, but GPS data, cell phone data, et cetera. And so that's where a big focus is right now from a regulatory perspective. But from a privacy perspective, we have those kind of regulatory compliance approaches. We very much know our customers, especially these first couple of years, kind of getting back to that pre-booking approach. It's a very kind of curated process where it's not just anybody that can log in and task a satellite image. And so down the road, though, as we do want to start thinking more about that democratization aspect, it is at odds with having a perfect plan and robust plan related to bad actors. As we've seen with just the internet or whatever technology that's proliferated, there's going to be bad actors. And so we very much, don't want that to prevent us from making it accessible, making it transparent, creating that accountability. But we are, the first company that, well, not the first company, but the idea, I can't talk much about this except for where the idea for Albedo came from, which was when Trump tweeted a classified satellite image years ago. If anybody remembers that, when he was president, he declassified it on Twitter, which was crazy, but that's in his authority. And people saw it and they were like, that looks like coaster-sized pixels. And so that really, what we're doing is bringing something that seemingly has only been for the government's use to the broader public and to the world.
Well, you mentioned, regulations, but are there regulations for this what is it, VLO,
VLEO.
VLEO, okay, so very low Earth orbit, satellites. Are there regulations for that? It feels like it's something between a satellite and a drone. Are there no-fly zones? How do you ensure that, a so-called private company isn't flying over critical infrastructure or something or trying to capture that information, right?
So from just an orbit perspective, the regulators actually love VLEO because there's no space debris there. It's a self-cleaning orbit. If our satellite breaks, it deorbits into the atmosphere quickly, and that's really the problem in LEO, in low Earth orbit, is that these satellites, if they break, they zip around for hundreds of years, and you have no net to catch them. But from a resolution perspective, so the imagery product itself, that has been much more scrutinized and regulated in the past. And we're actually the first company that has a license to sell this level of resolution. Now that is more from a national security concern perspective, where there are certain restrictions and guidelines that we follow to still preserve some of those national security concerns. But then the privacy regulations are kind of a different component, not related to the national security side, that have more to do with the aggregation of the data for the users and kind of taking all those different modalities into from a privacy violation perspective.
Right.
And so it's kind of a mix of those two things.
Right. Well, I guess there's not much in the way of data privacy regulation federally in the U.S. So
right.
That kind of, do you find that you are having conversations with lawmakers to try to kind of set a path for that as it relates to your technology in particular?
I think as we get to that point in a few years where we're starting to think more about democratization and understanding, okay, with this resolution and with what we can see in the imagery, what would bad actors do? What is possible with it? A lot of it has to do more from scenarios that we're familiar with the geopolitical situation and allies and adversaries and how imagery can get around. From a domestic situation, And from a kind of US privacy perspective, I think we'll learn more about that once we get, up into that point.
Right. If anyone does have any questions, they feel free to step up to the mic. Okay, yeah, please.
Hi, Rebecca. You mentioned that it's really important to have an advocate or a partner when you're trying to work with the government. Do you have any recommendations on what are the best practices on trying to get somebody to advocate for you or a partner if you don't have a pre-existing relationship with the government?
Yeah, sure. First I'll say the number of mistakes that we see earlier stage companies make when they immediately want to jump into Fed. Typically what people will do is they will hire a Fed salesperson or a lobbyist right out of the gate. And that typically is not a great move unless your technology really requires the government, the Congress to tell the government that they can use it, which in 99% of the cases is not going to be the case. So what you really want to do is as much as you can figure out, like with your product, what agencies do you think have a need for it? And there's a lot of data that's out there. You can use BGov, GovTribe, GovWin, but basically when the government says they want to go buy something, they put it out publicly, unless it's a classified thing, but they put it out publicly. And so what you can do is you can sift through that data. So if you know, like whoever your competitor is, right, and you know they're selling to the government, you can go and look and see what contracts have they won, in what offices have they won them, are they working with partners like Deloitte or Booz Allen. So you can basically try to see somebody near to you that has done it already. And then within the DC ecosystem, there are companies that will help you with proposal writing. There are companies that will help you with lobbying. What we take, our view on the matter is, we've talked about democratization a bunch here. We have a view that we would like to democratize the knowledge of how the federal market works. So every quarter, we run a federal accelerator program. It's just 1 to 2 hours per week for 8 weeks, and we cover marketing, use case mapping, pricing, working with partners, all the fundamentals, and it's also very inexpensive. We actually lose money on it. And so our mission is get as many companies out there to know how the market works so that you can pick the right vendor to go work with you and say, I think I want to go after the SBIR program. Let me go and work with a proposal writer who can help me get there. So it's a way to better understand the market and then be able to make tactical decisions.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, you know what, you're right. We'll go. Please.
Hi, my name is Stefan Smith. So for my company's name is called Persality. In the question of playing ball with the government, I know that there are currently some regulations around with AI, concerns about what the upcoming notice of with the election, FinCEN. What are some notes for startups to be aware about for AI regulation, blockchain, in regards to working with the government or having to get investments from the government around that space? I know we're seeing with Meta, with social networking. What are some notes to follow on in order to negotiate towards a path towards investing and working with the government?
So it's a strategic and tactical. Again, I'll keep going back to sort of that mindset of strategic, what is the government doing, and then tactically, how can you sell into it? So strategically, from an AI perspective, they're still trying to figure themselves out, right? So I think the Biden administration just put out, they always have working groups on this sort of thing and where they want AI to go and what overarching regulations they want the government to follow as it goes out to look for AI technologies. So you'll find overarching strategy documents. But really, from a tactical level, what you want to get into is, okay, are there any offices in the government right now that are trying to leverage AI technologies? Now, I will tell you, there was maybe a couple years ago, the government said, this pile of dollars will only go to AI companies. Well, then what do you know? Every company changed their name to put .ai at the end and then went ahead and tried to go after those dollars. So there's different things that the market is influencing in a good way and a bad way. I think, again, you want to get into the real data. Who's buying what that's similar to your company? Who's buying AI products right now? Do you need to go through a partner to actually do it? Because the other thing I would say with the government is you have a lot of people who've been in the government for a very long time. And so, they know conceptually what AI is, but a lot of the data architecture that they have won't actually facilitate the use of an AI product on whatever data sets they're working on anyway. So that again gets to strategically, you can see the Biden administration right now wants to leverage AI in this way, but tactically, how are the agencies actually doing it? And to find that data, you want to again go into one of those tools, figure out who's buying something, how are they buying it, are they buying it through a partner, and then talking to partners as well.
Now, you said about partners in that situation. Now, for the, in addition to looking towards international investments, entering into different markets, what are some thoughts that you have about that?
About you selling the product to international governments?
Or for a startup entering.
You know what, guys?
into
I'm sorry
international
to break this up. We are out of time, unfortunately. But I've been given the option of having someone, if you're interested, join me for a live episode of Equity soon.
Okay.
And I would love to hear from the people who are waiting in line. We'll go get our mics off. We'll come back out, and then I'll write down your questions, and we can get them answered for a podcast of Equity. How does that sound? Is that all right with you guys? Cool. Okay. Great. Well, thank you all for joining us today, and yeah.